Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk a little bit about cynicism, negativity and that kind of thing, right? So I would say I'm a fairly cynical person. I tend to look at things and see the worst in them. I think a good example of this is I went to this sort of club thing, right, about, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, right? And it was like this sort of nightclub kind of thing in Camden where there's one stage for one type of music, and then there's another stage for another type of music, and then there's a few hallways in between, a few little side rooms and stuff, right? But you go into the main like auditorium part of this club, and like there's cages hanging from the ceiling, right, with like girls, sort of like half-naked girls dancing inside them, right? And I was there with a few friends, and a lot of the friends are like, you know, moshing out to some of the music, having fun, doing that kind of thing. One of them is like sort of sat there leaning like this, sipping on their beer, kind of like, those girls looking pretty nice. I was sitting there thinking, isn't it terrible that like the years of women's subjugation has led to this being an acceptable thing that is allowed to just infest the world? Like this is disgusting. This is kind of grim. I don't mean it from a sense of like I'm offended by the fact that they're doing it, because I'm sure there's like people out there that want to dance in cages, but the fact that there's even that want, right, must stem from some level of generational trauma, right? At least I think. I don't know, maybe not, right? But the fact is that my mind goes straight there, right? A few weeks ago I was having dinner with some people, right? And I was telling a little story about like how I keep getting asked how tall I am at work, right? And I have this little game of like adding an inch every time someone asks. And they were asking me a couple of questions about it, and I offhandedly sort of said, you know, it's really hard to keep back the urge to tell people I'm going to die 10 years earlier than average. And then someone put down their fork and was like, oh, almost like a, oh, well, I never sort of thing, right? And it was a bit like, oh shit, I did just go straight for the morbid, didn't I, right? That's what I mean by cynicism. That kind of heading straight for the negative, seeing the worst in everything, right? Because look, there's a lot of bad going on. There's wealth inequality, there's injustices all across the world. You know, I currently live in one of the most prosperous nations on planet Earth, and it's still not great, right? How bad is that, right? It's not great, the system that we're living under. It's not brilliant that everything's going on. It's not great that there's genocides happening across the world. It's not great, you know, there's all sorts of horrible, terrible things going on as far as the eye can see, right? Probably within a kilometre of me right now, someone is being like attacked or like disemboweled or whatever, right? Maybe not a mile, maybe like 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever, right? That kind of thing. You know, if you've watched pornography on a regular basis, there is like a very high percentage chance that you have actively watched someone who is currently being human trafficked, right? That kind of thing, seeing those injustices in the world, right? I suppose by definition, I'm literally woke, because that is what wokeness means. It's about like understanding that there's a load of systematic injustice in the world. But I don't mean it in the, you know, the, oh, I'm so offended by everything sort of way. I just mean it as an example of what the cynicism can do, right? Cynicism can draw you down these negative roads to seeing so much horror and misery and disgust in the world, right? And what's the kind of reaction to that? You can either like live in it and let it infest you and just like dwell in it, or you can try your best and absolute most to push it away and to not let it control you, right? There's horrible things going on in politics right now, so much so that you could sit down and try and figure it all out and try and understand the history behind, I don't know, the genocide in Palestine, for instance. You could try and sit and research what led them to this current position, what the hell's going on, and then figure out how you can do something about it, right? But think about how much time each of those will take, right? I spent a good 5 hours when like October the 7th or whatever happened, right? I spent a good 5 hours on like digging through different Wikipedia pages and like reading articles and stuff, trying to figure out like what was going on with this Palestine thing, right? Because I had heard about it. I had like cared about Palestine like ages ago, and Ross Kemp was doing documentaries on them, like pointing a camera at a little Palestinian kid going, oh, aren't you sad? And the Palestinian kid goes, yes, I'm being bombed. It's like, yeah, it's pretty horrible what's going on there, right? And so you keep trying to figure out what's going on, right? You keep trying to understand, and the more that you try to understand, the harder, not only does more information come and more, nuances come about from it. And I don't mean that in a way like, ooh, actually Israel's the good guys in this. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is that the more you look into it, the more brain energy you are spending on something that you can't help, that you can't solve, right? Them women dancing in that cages, why do I not like that? Why is that activating a negative thing within me? Well, in my mind, it's because it's a representation of the injustice that has come from thousands of years of women's subjugation, right? However, what am I going to fucking fix all sexism overnight? And even if I did, it's not like there still wouldn't be that, echoing of the injustice through the next few generations, right? So what am I to do about that, right? I can either sit there and let it make me miserable, right? Or I can try my best to just sort of push it out and not let it bother me, right? So that's what I've been trying to do lately. I've been trying to shut out the negative stuff in the world, which is actually easier to do than you might think, right? So, I mean, I've done a couple videos on like not thinking about politics for the sake of your mental health. And one of the disagreements that has sort of come about from it is like, oh, but I'm like an oppressed group. And if I don't think about politics, that means that I'm sort of letting them win kind of thing. And like, I need to think about politics because I am an oppressed people, right? And I do understand where that's sort of coming from. A lot of it was like, I get it, I do get it, right? But at the same time, you knowing about this stuff isn't gonna fix it, right? Just knowing about, like right now, right? We live in an age of the internet where information is easily accessible, more easily accessible than it's ever been in human history, right? We're at a point where we can discuss ideas with one another in a way that we never could before, right? And people thought that it was gonna fix the world, that it was gonna make the world so much better. Has it? No. It hasn't done anything. It hasn't done diddly fucking squat, right? We're still living in the same capitalist corporate fucking mess that we were 50 years ago, right? So what are we to do about it, right? Because obviously, shutting these things out for the sake of our mental health isn't necessarily going to make the problems go away. And if you are suffering from those problems, right, then what I'm saying here might sort of sound like, oh yeah, well just let the bully beat you up, right? Which I do understand. I don't want to get the wires crossed here, right? If there is an issue that is like, targeting you, right? Stay engaged with it. Try and see what you can do about it and try and fix that thing that is getting in your way, right? But at the same time, don't let it control your life, right? Say if you're, I don't know, one of them women dancing in the fucking cages, right? And you don't really like this job. You're only doing it for a bit of money because, you get more tips and, people like give you loads and loads of money because they're like horny men and whatever. So you're kind of like using that fact and, you don't really enjoy doing any of this. You don't want to be sitting there dancing in the cage, but it's good money. So I'm going to just keep doing it. How long am I going to keep doing it for? I don't know. And it maybe, opens up a whole load of other questions about the nature of sexuality and that kind of thing. Just stop thinking so much, right? Just try and engage with one idea at a time. And I think the overwhelmingness of all these negative ideas is what leads to cynicism, because cynicism isn't necessarily the resignation from the world. It's more of a, you're stood outside the world observing it for what it, quote, really is, right? And judging it in a negative light, right? We don't necessarily have to do that. And we don't necessarily have to shut everything out either. We can try and see everything and try and see the silver linings in it. Sure, it might be absurdly and almost childishly and naively optimistic to sit and look at the state of the world with, say, I don't know, climate change and all sorts of horrible injustices and the rise of fascism and try and find a silver lining. But what else are you going to do? You're going to sit there and just dwell in how shit everything is all the time. You've only got one life. Try and make it as happy as possible, no matter what, okay? Look, I understand that we all live in differing situations and that I certainly come from a place of privilege where I can like not worry so much about various things. Like I didn't grow up in a fucking concentration camp or some shit like that, right? So I don't have to worry about certain things like that. So maybe because I have that privilege, I can see things from this point of view. But at the same time, I think it's important to try and shut out the beckoning call of cynicism. Right? Because all that's going to happen if you allow cynicism to overwhelm you, right? All that's going to happen is you are going to become less happy by default. Your standard level of happiness will drop. And by which I mean, say your default level of happiness, right? This is your state that you constantly return to, right? That will suddenly become more like that, right? And you don't want that, do you? Do you want to be going around seeing the worst in everything? I don't want to be going to clubs and thinking about the thousands of years of women's subjugation. I want to go there and listen to the music and headbang to the sick riffs. But for some reason I can't, and I don't understand why, right? What is it that I need to do from within? And I think the best answer I've got so far, the best solution, maybe not necessarily like a complete solution, is to try and shut as much of it out as possible. Right? Because I'm not going to solve sexism, I'm not going to solve racism, I'm not going to solve, climate change, right? None of these things are going to be solved by me, they're not going to be solved by you, they're certainly not going to be solved by Elon Musk, they're not going to be solved by anybody, right? So all we can do is try and forget about it. Even as like dire as that sounds, right? All we need to do is just try and make our own lives as fulfilling as possible. And if you can do that, and if you can shut out the hollering of cynicism to as best a degree as you can, you'll be able to see the world in a better light. And if you can do that and make yourself happier, and if we can all make ourselves happier, we'll be able to more accurately and productively analyze the situation and figure out what we can actually do about it, right? You're never able to come up with a solution for something while you're stressed out, right? You ever been like really stressed out and you're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do, what am I gonna do? Have you ever solved anything like that? No. You solve it after the fact when you're able to lie back and think and actually take some time to relax and let your brain work at its own natural pace, right? So that's what I think we should all do, but particularly what you should do, right? Because it's not about us as a collective, it's about you as a person, as a, loving, generous, genuine, good-hearted person that you deep down know that you are, right? That you want the world to be better. How are you going to do that? You on your own can't. All of us as a collective can, right? And all we can do is try and make that collective more capable and ready to make changes in the world for the better. So what I mean by that is try and make people's day, right? Make people happy. The more more happiness is in the world, the better we're going to be doing in the future, right? Because if everyone was sort of at a decent level of happiness, right? And that they're because your productivity comes from a state of happiness, right? Is what I think. Because you're never at your most productive when you're miserable, right? When I get miserable, I stop being so productive. Most of my productivity comes from when I'm happy. When I'm really miserable and sad and like in my own head, I can't get anything done. And I think that's what's happening to humanity as a whole right now, is it's so caught up in its head, right? With the cynicism and the climate doomerism and all sorts of stuff like that, right? So what we need to do is just try and pull back, right? Strip away the emotion and the misery and the cynicism from this and just see what's going on a basic level, right? Not taking any value judgments on whether something's good or bad, and then we can do something about it, is my idea. I don't know if it works. I hope it works, because I've just spent all this time talking about it. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got something out of it. If you disagree with this general idea, please let me know why. Because I got some good disagreements on my like political videos, and I'd like to keep that discussion going. Because this isn't like a thing for like, look at me, I'm so fucking correct and you're all fucking idiots sort of thing. This is just an open discussion and a continual discourse, essentially, right? And we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. We'll see what we can figure out, if we can come to any good conclusions. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care, and bye-bye. Yeah.